The harsh winds of Callisto howled across the abandoned research facility as Commander Neva Solaris adjusted her thermal suit. This routine patrol had turned into something far more interesting when her scanners picked up an anomalous life sign beneath the facility's western wing. Control. "I'm investigating a possible survivor," she reported, her breath fogging in the frigid air. "Maintain radio silence until my signal." The corridor ahead was littered with debris, ceiling panels hanging precariously. Her light illuminated frost-covered walls. The facility abandoned for nearly a decade after the mining corporation declared bankruptcy. Yet something or someone was down here. A soft groan echoed from behind a collapsed doorway. Neva drew her pulse pistol, approaching cautiously. Through the gap, she spotted a figure huddled in the corner, surrounded by spent power cells and broken equipment. "Federation security." "Identify yourself," she commanded, training her weapon on the shape. When he looked up, Neva faltered. Not human, his skin was a deep indigo that seemed to absorb the light, marked with luminescent patterns along his temples. His eyes, large and silver, reflected her own image back at her. "Please," he whispered, his voice melodic yet strained. "They're coming back. Blooder, something like it. Violet and thick." Sipped through his fingers where he clutched his side. Without thinking, Neva holstered her weapon and knelt beside him. "Who's coming back?" "What happened?" "Hunters," he managed, wincing. "Bounty collectors. I escaped their ship during the storm." The facility's sensors suddenly blared to life, red lights flashing throughout the corridor. Someone had triggered the perimeter alarms. "Can you walk?" Neva asked, already pulling his arm across her shoulders. He nodded weakly. "I'm Kieran Voss. Why are you helping me?" "Commander Neva Solaris." "And I haven't decided if I'm helping you yet," she replied, though they both knew she already had. They limped toward the emergency exit when the first blast shook the corridor. Voices echoed from the main entrance, rough, angry. Neva recognized the dialect of the Outer Rim mercenaries. "This way," she whispered, pulling him into a maintenance shaft barely large enough for them both, pressed against each other in the confined space. Neva felt his heart beat faster than a human's, a double pulse that reminded her how different he was. Yet something about him felt familiar, as though they'd met in another life. "Hold on to me," she instructed, pulling a grapple launcher from her belt, as they ascended through the ventilation system. Kieran's arm tightened around her waist. His face was close enough that she could feel his breath against her neck. "Why does someone want you dead?" she asked. He met her gaze, silver eyes intense. "Because I know things that could change everything." When they reached her hidden shuttle, Neva made her decision. Protocol dictated taking him to headquarters for questioning. Instead, she punched in coordinates for her private outpost. "You saved me," Kieran murmured as they lifted off, the mercenary ships visible on the horizon. He fell to his knees, weakened from blood loss. "Let me be the one who saves you next." Sanctuary bond. The horizon drifted silently through an asteroid field, its stealth systems ensuring they remained invisible to tracking scans. Inside the medical bay, Neva finished applying regenerative gel to Kieran's wound, her fingers hesitating over the intricate patterns on his skin. "These markings," she said. "I've never seen anything like them." Kieran's silver eyes followed her movements. "They tell our life stories. This one," he guided her fingers to a spiral pattern near his collarbone, "represents my departure from home." The touch sent warmth through her hand, unexpected and electric. Neva pulled back slightly, confused by her reaction. "And what story brought you to that facility?" she asked, refocusing. Kieran sat up cautiously, testing his newly healed side. "I was a data analyst for the Galactic Alliance. I discovered corruption weapons, deals, bribes, assassinations all traced back to officials who control the military budget. That's why mercenaries were after you. Captain Julian Reed sent them? He's eliminated everyone else who knew." Kieran's expression darkened. "I escaped with proof embedded in my genetic code. The patterns you see? They're not just cultural, they're data storage." Neva processed this information while securing the medical supplies. Her small ship offered little space, forcing a proximity that made her increasingly aware of him. Every movement brought them together, hands brushing, shoulders touching. Later, she prepared a simple meal in the galley. Kieran appeared in the doorway, freshly showered, wearing spare clothes she provided. They hung loosely on his tall frame, revealing glimpses of more luminescent patterns. "I'm endangering you," he said quietly. "When Julian discovers I'm with you, he won't," Neva interrupted, passing him a plate. "Besides, I've handled worse." Their fingers connected during the exchange, lingering longer than necessary. This time, neither pulled away immediately. That night, space grew colder as they drifted further from the system's star. Environmental controls struggled against the chill, forcing Neva to conserve power. In the cramped sleeping quarters, they sat wrapped in thermal blankets, sharing body heat and stories. "Your species values touch," Kieran observed when Neva unconsciously leaned against him. "Humans do?" "Yes." She found herself explaining concepts of physical comfort. Connection. When she shivered, his arm tentatively wrapped around her shoulders. The gesture was cautious, questioning. Neva hesitated only briefly before relaxing into his embrace, her head resting against his chest, where she could hear his double heartbeat. "Is this acceptable?" He whispered into her hair. "More than acceptable," she murmured, surprised by how natural it felt. Morning found them entwined. Neva's head on Kieran's chest, his arms protective around her. Neither mentioned how they'd shifted from sitting to lying together during the night, how their bodies had sought each other in sleep. What began as survival was becoming something neither had anticipated, something dangerous in their situation, yet impossible to ignore. Space Station Artemis hung against the backdrop of a nebula, its gleaming superstructure bustling with activity. Neva and Kieran moved through crowded corridors, her uniform providing some protection against scrutiny while he kept his head down, patterns temporarily muted with cosmetic film. "My contact will meet us at Docking Bay 17, Neva murmured. "They can extract the data safely." Kieran's hand briefly touched hers. "And after, what happens to us?" The question carried weight beyond the immediate mission. 3 days aboard. The horizon had created something neither had expected: moments of laughter despite their danger. Quiet conversations extending into night, and increasingly intimate touches that spoke of growing desire. "First we survive," Neva replied, though her eyes promised more. They passed a public view screen broadcasting news. Kieran froze at the image displayed: Captain Julian Reed, accepting a commendation for exceptional service. "That's him," he whispered. "The man who ordered the deaths of 23 analysts?" Neva pulled him into an alcove as a security patrol passed. Their bodies pressed together in the narrow space, faces inches apart. For a moment the danger receded, replaced by awareness of each other. Kieran's hand moved to her waist, steadying, but also claiming. "We should," Neva began, but was interrupted as the station's alarms blared. "Attention all personnel. Security lockdown in progress. Report suspicious individuals, particularly those traveling with non-humans." Their eyes met in understanding. They'd been compromised. "This way," Kieran said, pulling her toward maintenance corridors he'd memorized from station schematics. They navigated service tunnels, the sounds of pursuit growing distant. In a junction room filled with humming equipment, they paused to catch their breath. "We need a new plan," Neva said. "Nexus system," Kieran suggested. "There's an old temple on the main planet where data can be broadcast across all Alliance channels simultaneously. That's 3 days' travel through contested space. We don't have a choice anymore." Their conversation halted as Kieran suddenly stepped forward, cradling Neva's face in his hands. The unexpected tenderness of his touch silenced her. "If we don't succeed," he said softly, "I need you to know that meeting you wasn't just fate. It was the universe correcting itself." Without hesitation, Neva closed the remaining distance between them. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning, then deepening as certainty replaced doubt. His skin warmed beneath her hands, patterns beginning to glow despite the cosmetic film. When they separated, breathless, Neva saw his markings pulsing with a new intensity. "They respond to emotion," he explained, voice husky. "They've never glowed this brightly before." A noise in the corridor forced them apart. Reality intruded on their moment, but something fundamental had changed. They weren't just allies in danger, they were something more, something worth fighting to protect. "The Nexus system it is," Neva decided. "Together." Crimson eclipse planet Nexus filled the viewport, its atmosphere bathed in red from the approaching eclipse. According to Kieran, this rare celestial event would amplify the temple's broadcast capabilities, making it the perfect moment to transmit his evidence. Their stolen shuttle, acquired during a narrow escape from Artemis, limped toward the surface. Damage sustained during pursuit made landing treacherous, but Neva's skilled hands kept them steady. "We have 12 hours until the eclipse reaches totality," Kieran said, studying navigation charts, his fingers intertwined with Neva's when she finished the landing sequence, a gesture that had become natural over the past days. Their journey had transformed them. Quiet nights spent learning each other's bodies, discovering differences and similarities between their species. Morning conversations revealing hopes they'd never shared with anyone else. Plans whispered against. Skin in the dark dreams of after, when this mission would end and something new could begin. The temple stood atop a mountain, ancient stones silhouetted against the reddening sky. They began their ascent as twin moons rose, casting long shadows across the path. "The patterns on your skin," Neva asked as they climbed. "Will they survive?" "The data extraction." Kieran touched the luminescent markings visible beneath his torn shirt. "They'll fade. Part of me will be lost." "Not the part that matters," she replied. Pressing her lips to the pattern over his heart, they reached a plateau halfway up the mountain when the first energy blast struck nearby rocks. Captain Julian Reed's voice echoed from speakers on the approaching military transport. "Commander Solaris, surrender the alien fugitive, and you'll be granted clemency." Neva pushed Kieran toward a crevice in the rocks. "Get to the temple. I'll hold them off." "Not without you," he insisted. "This isn't a discussion. The data is what matters." Her expression softened momentarily. "Find me after." Their farewell kiss was fierce, desperate with unspoken fears. Then Neva shoved him toward safety while drawing her weapon. "Captain Reed," she shouted, moving away from Kieran's position. "Let's discuss your corruption charges in person." Shots peppered the ground as she dove for cover, drawing the attackers away from Kieran's escape route. From her position, she glimpsed his figure disappearing upward, relief mixing with determination. An unexpected ally appeared beside her, Tessa Morgan, her former squadron leader, wielding a sniper rifle. "Heard you needed backup," Tessa said with a grin. "Alliance Integrity Division received anonymous tips about Reed. I'm here officially." "They have us outnumbered," Neva observed. "Then we'll just have to be smarter," Tessa replied, handing her additional ammunition. As the crimson eclipse deepened overhead, Neva fought with renewed purpose. Somewhere above, Kieran approached the temple alone. Whatever happened now, their connection had already changed everything for them, and soon, for the entire Alliance. The ancient temple's central chamber glowed crimson as the eclipse reached totality. Kieran stood before the crystalline transmission array, his skin patterns pulsating in sync with the energy building around him. Each marking contained fragments of evidence. Against the corruption that had infiltrated the highest levels of the Alliance, below, sounds of battle echoed up the mountain. Neva was down there, fighting for him, for truth. The thought strengthened his resolve as he placed his hands on the crystal. Pain shot through his body as the extraction began, its patterns flickering as data transferred to the array. Through gritted teeth, he focused on memories of Neva, her strength, her touch. The future they'd whispered about in quiet moments aboard the horizon. The chamber doors burst open. Captain Julian Reed entered, weapon raised, face contorted with rage. "Step away from the array," he commanded. "It's too late," Kieran responded, voice strained. "The transmission has begun." Reed's finger tightened on the trigger. "Then you've served your purpose." A shot rang out, but it wasn't Reed's weapon. The captain crumpled, revealing Neva in the doorway, breathing hard, uniform torn and bloodied. "You're late," Kieran managed through waves of pain. "Traffic," she replied with a weak smile. Rushing to his side, the extraction continued, his markings fading as the crystal brightened. Neva supported his weakening body, her arms around his waist, her forehead pressed to his. "Stay with me," she whispered. "We have plans, remember? That house on the coast of New Europa? The garden you promised to teach me about." The last of his patterns transferred as the eclipse reached perfect alignment. Energy surged through the temple, broadcasting across every Alliance channel. Simultaneously, Irrefutable evidence of the conspiracy. Names, dates, locations, all preserved in Kieran's genetic patterns. When the light faded, Kieran collapsed into Neva's arms, his once luminescent skin now bare. She cradled him, tears falling onto his face. "Kieran, please. We won." His eyes flickered open, silver irises finding hers. "We did?" Tessa appeared in the doorway. "Alliance integrity forces have secured the area. Arrests are already happening across 3 systems." But Neva barely heard, focused entirely on Kieran as color slowly returned to his face. "Your patterns," she said, tracing where they had been. "They're gone." "Not gone," he corrected softly. "Transformed. Now I can write new stories." He guided her hand to his heart. "This one will be about a human commander who saved me twice, once from hunters, and once from loneliness." Outside, the eclipse began to wane. Normal light returning to Nexus. Kieran stood with Neva's help, their bodies leaning into each other naturally. "Ready for what comes next?" she asked. His answer was a kiss that spoke of endings and beginnings, of dangers faced and overcome, of a connection that transcended species and space. "With you," he murmured against her lips, "I'm ready for everything."